we as content creators need to do is show the benefit of shutting down your shop, taking that loss of income and getting your people trained.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting, thought-provoking episode of the Jaded Mechanic Podcast. My name's Jeff, and I'd like to thank you for joining me on this journey of reflection and insight into the toils and triumphs of a career in automotive repair. After more than 20 years of skin, knuckles, and tool debt, I want to share my perspectives and hear other people's thoughts about our industry. So pour yourself a strong coffee or grab a cold Canadian beer and get ready for some great conversation.
Welcome back, everybody, to another fantastic episode. I've got a very special guest with me tonight, Michael Berg, the Flat Rate Master. Michael, introduce yourself to everybody.
Well, I am the Flat Rate Master.
Awesome.
An automotive technician for 30 years and YouTuber for like 7.
Right. So, how are you enjoying? I don't want to call it a holiday, but the time away from work, how's that feeling?
Feels really good.
Yeah, I imagine it would. So, yeah, I mean, you're keeping busy. You got your content coming out and everything like that. But
yeah.
And I know you go hard on that. Like you're one of the most consistent, I'll say, in your content, getting it out there, getting it at the. I mean, you can almost set your watch by it, right? It's good. And I've seen now there's a lot more of it, and I think we appreciate that. So,
I mean, years ago, if I didn't put myself on a schedule, I'd put it off. And so early on, I committed to doing 3 videos a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so I developed a system that made that possible.
Right.
So it was batch film my videos on Thursday, edit them on the weekend, and have them ready to go the next week.
So maybe it's a vague question, but what made you decide that was the avenue you were going to take? Like, I mean, because we know, YouTube and auto repair is not a new thing, right? There's a lot of people that have been doing it a long time, and but what? Because you don't come on with a lot of the how to fix the car type discussions, right? You come along with a lot of the stuff that I really get into, which is the industry stuff, the challenges and whatnot. So what made you decide to go that route?
Well, back in the day, if you remember ETCG1, Eric the Car Guy,
yeah,
he would do automotive technician type stuff on that channel. And then he got away from that. And then Humble Mechanic kind of started his channel doing kind of that same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he also got away from that, both went to the DIY and stopped talking about the industry for the most part. Humble still does every now and then.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is stuff that nobody does. Nobody stays doing it. Somebody needs to do it. Somebody needs to help these young technicians that are getting into the industry. And it was just like natural for me because I've always done mentoring young technicians coming into the shop, giving them tool advice, giving them life advice. And it just kind of fit with me. So it was like just perfect.
Yeah. And it's I want to say that it's there was definitely a lack of it, right? There was a need for it, I feel, because there's, YouTube is full of how to fix something or how to, the training level that, we've got guys like we can thank Scanner Danner and, all these other countless, Brendan Steckler, Mario Rojas, all these guys that have fantastic content on how to fix the car. But I mean, sometimes it's like, we don't discuss, what the trials and tribulations that we face, I think, out there in a big enough platform that can be seen. I mean, there really is no bigger platform than YouTube. So it's like, it was, I always longed for that, I guess, was to see more of it. So how long you been a mechanic or technician? I guess?
28 years.
28 years, eh? What got
Yep.
you into that? Were you,
I had to fix my own and my dad's junk, and
uh-huh.
I found out I was good at it and I enjoyed it. So,
Yeah. So you were just kind of a gearhead right from
no, I was not a gearhead at all. I was not into cars. Never even crossed my mind to work on cars. It just,
Mhm.
had to fix my own junk, and then my dad needed help fixing his cars, and then I was good at it. So, and I
Right.
enjoyed it. So it just kind of, I went in that direction.
Uh-huh. What's some of your earliest jobs? Like, did you start out with the flat rate thing? Were you like smaller independent? Like, I know that's where you were last, but if you've got some
Yeah.
dealer experience, I think in your background, you've got like, tell us about that. What's the evolution of Mike as a mechanic?
Started working on garbage trucks.
Oh,
It was
I bet.
not flat rate.
Yeah.
Um, and then, because what happened is my dad owned a garbage service,
Okay.
and so I wound up helping him in various parts of the business. We rented a shop, so I had a place to fix the stuff, because trucks are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was going to tech school and was doing all that, then while my dad got sick, passed away, I took over the control of the business, ran it for a long time. When I got married, I was spread so thin at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You think getting techs to work is hard. Try getting people to ride on the back of a garbage truck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had a buddy of mine that also had a service, so I sold it to him, and then kind of sold cars. That's actually literally my dealership experience, is I sold cars for a little while.
Okay.
Then went back to working on cars in shops around local independents,
Mm-hmm.
and then took a 4-year break from working on cars to be a regional sales manager for a couple different equipment manufacturers in the automotive industry.
Okay.
And then when that's the only other job I got fired from, was when I worked for Challenger Lifts. The vice president, her friend, got fired from Chicago Pneumatic as a VP. He lived in my territory. He was out. He was in, I was out.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was literally on my way to North Carolina to go deal with a car that had fallen off a lift. And the thing was, it was in my call report where I was going, and they didn't care. They called and fired me on a Monday. So I turned around I was past Charlotte from Atlanta.
Okay.
Turned around and had to drive back. Called the guy I was supposed to meet. He was already up there, and he's like, wait, what? And, so decided on the way back, with everything going on in the industry at that time, I was like, I need to do something, not this. Because we had a joke in that industry, is like the names never changed. It was just the name on their shirt.
Yeah.
Because they'd go from company to company to company.
Yep.
So that's when I opened my own shop. Went pretty well for a couple years. The economy had a horrible downturn at that point. The private school, I did a lot of their people's, that had their kids there, and I was real convenient to the school.
Mm-hmm.
School closed, so I lost most of those customers because I was no longer convenient.
Yeah.
I lost several big fleet accounts because they lost accounts in Georgia. Like, one account literally lost the entire state of Georgia. So I went from working on a buttload of their vans to none of them.
Yeah.
And along those lines, of course, things happen. My landlord started screwing with me, and we had some falling out, and I lost my lease. So I said, screw this. I'll go back to fixing cars and not have to deal with this.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went back to working as a tech, and that's when I started commuting to Atlanta. I don't live in Atlanta. I live outside of Atlanta, and worked at several shops in Atlanta, and then wound up opening up the shop that I got fired from. I was employee number 3.
Okay. So you were in on the ground level then,
Yes.
really, of that
Yeah.
place. Yeah. Yeah. So you touched on tech school. You graduated.
Yeah.
What school did you attend?
West Central.
What's nice. Yeah. And you studied just automotive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. Do you think that that's was it? I don't want to say was it worth the investment, but do you feel like that gave you a leg up, gave you an advantage? Was
I don't know if it gave me a advantage so much as it really just gave me all the fundamentals,
Mm-hmm.
That I could use later on.
Right.
Figuring out, this is how an electrical circuit works, and that might come in handy someday.
Yeah.
I didn't get a lot of really good experience as far as that, but I got all the fundamentals, and that's the most important thing to get out of school.
Yeah, I agree.
Because if you don't have, you don't understand how ground works, you're not going to be able to diagnose an electrical circuit.
Yeah, for sure. So that you've kind of didn't just went in on your own thing then, really, right? Like, you started that shop, but you'd closed out your shop and went to work for them.
A couple shops after,
Yeah.
I closed my shop. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so this is in Georgia?
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of where you've stayed within that state? You didn't travel, like move around the country at all, or?
I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
I moved to Georgia when I was 11, and I've lived in the same county in Georgia for 38 years.
Yeah. So that's pretty much your career home.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. It's a beautiful state. I've been through it a bunch of times, but I've never had a chance to get comfortable and stay there for more than just passing through like a day or two.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So tell us, you got in on the ground floor of this shop. And how did you start right away as kind of like, was that your designated role as a foreman, or were you just,
when I started, I was a lead technician.
Yeah.
It was only 3 technicians when we opened.
Mm-hmm. And it expanded to a pretty big business right now, right?
Yeah. 9 or 10 techs.
Yeah. So, so what am I trying to say here? How did you see that shop evolve? Like, you brought on, like, you saw some young people start, and what was your impression of some of them coming from a dealership versus an independent? Like, I know you've mentored all kinds. Do you see a difference between the challenge of bringing one into the business?
Coming from independent versus dealer really didn't too much matter at all.
Mm-hmm.
When it really came down to it is how passionate they were about the industry.
Right.
I've seen dealer techs that could care less about, testing anything. They were just, this is what it needs, throw a part at it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've seen other dealer techs that, were testing to the nth degree to make sure they were right on their call.
Yeah.
And I've seen independents the same way. So it really, what their background is really didn't matter to me as far as that. When it came to young kids, it was all about their attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Were they willing to learn? Were they willing to, when I give them a direction, were they going to follow it? Because that was one of the biggest problems I had with some young techs is I would, hang the fish on a stick and go, there's the fish. Yeah. All you got to do is reach over and grab it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd ask them about the test I asked them to do. No, I just sold that. That's not what I told you to do.
Yep. Yep.
and it's not gonna be fixed.
Yeah. So you're giving them a lesson, right? An opportunity to
Yeah.
learn a lesson there. And you're finding that they're not always taking advantage of that. I find that too. I've mentored a lot of young apprentices through, like I'm Canadian, so they call them, there's a whole apprenticeship program and the whole thing up here. And I've been very fortunate to have that, but I've had some that it's just like, they just want the answer, right? They just want to know what part to put on to fix what symptom. And then I've had some other ones that like, you can see that, flick of the switch and they get it, right? You give them that lesson and then it lights a fire them and they want more lessons. Cause I'm tired of and I'm sure you've seen it too in the groups and in the industry for years, how they say, oh, well, techs from work at independents, can't do this. And techs that work at dealerships are only parts changers. And I mean, I've had a lot of background at a dealership, and I can tell you that I'm the farthest thing from a parts changer, right? Like I've got and this is not me bragging. It's just, I think that's a crappy stereotype that's been out there for too long. And I think it's, more people need to stand up and say, no. I mean, yes, it does happen, but that's a technician problem, right? We know guys that throw parts at cars that doesn't matter where they work. They're going to throw parts at cars.
Hacks will be hacks no matter how they're paid, where they work, anything. They're hacks.
Yeah.
They will do the same no matter what.
Mm-hmm. And so the flat rate master, that's, you believe that is the best pay scale for a tech to work?
The thing about pay systems is anytime you get into it, anybody gets, butthurt about it no matter what. I think in United States, if you want to make the most money as a technician, not a niche technician, not doing, tearing ECMs apart and, replacing a bad part and that kind of stuff. If you're turning wrenches, you're diagnosing cars, you're doing everything a normal technician does. The best way to make the most money in this industry is flat rate.
Right. Yeah.
If you become efficient and you can beat the clock, obviously doing it right, that's the best way to make the most money in this industry.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
No, by no means I'm not trying to start a conflict or anything. I worked for a lot of years. I made really good money at it. It's just, I find that the biggest obstacle I always found was making sure that there wasn't too many, I always used to say pigs at the trough, right? Too many techs on the floor for the amount of workload that was coming into the shop. I just felt that always bred dissension in the ranks, right? It always had nobody wanted to work with each other, right? Everybody, it was a dog eat dog type thing. Otherwise, when I've seen shops that they get that ratio right, it's not that hard to make money doing it, right? It's almost easy, and we always talk about the politics and the favoritism and stuff like that. Yeah. There's two sides to that argument, right? Like, how do you think about that? Like if you've got, for instance, a tech that's really, really, really strong, and then you've got a tech that's starting out and he's limited, do you take better care of that established, stronger tech? Like, do you put a priority on that tech, Mike? I guess is what I'm asking, or do you just, not do that?
No, I don't favor anybody. My when I was assigning tickets, my thing is I wanted to the techs that needed to be pushed.
Right.
I gave them tickets that would push them.
Okay.
But I also gave them tickets that they could just bang out. Same with the guys that I knew could handle that ugly, screwed up car that's, been to 4 shops, nobody could fix it. I still want to give those guys, after I've got their butt kicked, I'm going to give them something that they can just burn and turn.
Yeah.
And so my biggest thing was trying to make sure everything was as even and fair as I could make it. So I never tried to load up, one guy with all the gravy, one guy with all, no, it's like, you're going to get your butt kicked a little bit on this one, but here's a, XYZ car that you can make some money on and kind of balance it out.
Yeah.
And, I was always available to help anybody in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
They needed advice on that car that's kicking their butt. I'm over there going, how can I help you? What, this is where I think you should go. This is where it could be, maybe you need to test this, etc.
Yeah.
But for everybody in the shop, you got to push them a little bit, but at the same time, you can't just screw them over.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tried to work that balance.
Yeah. A steady diet of garbage, right, can take somebody with a really good attitude and turn them. Do you think it's pivotal then, Mike, that somebody that is in a lead kind of position like yourself, that they're involved in the dispatch, like that they're kind of overseeing it? Or do you think, because Kyle, sometimes it can happen, we see dealerships, you've got a foreman and they might be on a different type of pay plan or whatever, right? And he's kind of overseeing, helping out, a mentor kind of role. But then you've got an automated dispatch system, or you've got just a person in the tower handing out tickets based on, what time they booked in and how long they've been sitting there, and I got to get that going. Do you think that really screws it up, or like?
I think that the person that assigns tickets should be the foreman,
Mm-hmm.
but on that same token, the foreman has to be care more about the team than himself or herself.
Yeah.
Because if your main concern is I need hours,
mm-hmm.
You're gonna, if your pay is based on anything to involve how tickets are distributed, you're gonna kind of basis that on how you distribute tickets. Like if you're just hourly and whatever, but you gotta make yourself look like you do stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're gonna, try to give yourself all the easy stuff that, you can just knock out real quick and then get back on your phone.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So it's real important that person is no, the team's more important. I don't need to do that quick break job. I need to take that nightmare off of him.
Mm-hmm.
So he can get back to doing those break jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that was always my whole thing when I was doing that is if anybody in the shop wasn't going to have work, it was going to be me.
Right. Yeah.
Even if it was, me handing off a crappy, oil change on a 2022 or whatever.
Yeah.
I'd rather they get the half hour, 0.3 or whatever shop I was at was half hour per oil change. I would rather they get it and me stand around than me take that half hour out of their pockets.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the person that does that needs to have that mindset.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest parts about getting somebody for that position.
We hear that nightmare story all the time, right? When we talk about foremans and stuff. Cause I mean, I've been through it more than once. I've seen the foreman where they kind of walk in the morning and they're there 20 minutes early and they take the 4 best tickets in the pile that's already there that day. They go into a pile for them. Right. And then everything else gets handed around. And I understand why they do it, because if you're holding that foreman you still have to turn X by the end of the day. He has to do that, right? Or they have to look after that because it's expected. And let's be real, they need to get paid, right? So like, obviously you think everybody pretty much should be on flat rate, but do you think, like, how do you make it work, Mike, other than when you're running into stuff like that? Because when you say it's a slow day and there's not a whole lot of work, Mike, and you give the tickets away to look after your team, what's your pay suffers then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's like I said, that's, how I looked at it is always, cause I'm responsible,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes down to it, if they didn't make any money, because of how I distributed the tickets, that's on me.
Yeah.
If like the shop I was at, anything that you had history with
Mm-hmm.
went back to you.
Yes.
So if you done a brake job on a car, it came back 2 years later for a check engine light complaint, it came back to you.
Yeah.
And so I made a lot of my money based on history because you always got it back. So when I might not have worked on as many cars, virgins as other people because of that.
Yep.
but I still had enough to keep, my lights on and all that.
Mm.
So I've always been in this industry as far as flat rate is if you have a bad week, it's just a week.
Yeah.
There's always next week.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you go, I had techs, complaining because they weren't getting paid on a job that they finished, but the customer didn't pick up. And I'm like, so you get paid on it next week.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the foreman position, if you don't have the right person in that role, it's really easy for a lot of bad feelings to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm not opposed to a foreman being hourly or salary or whatever, and a production bonus, because it is a unique position.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think the more as the foreman gets more into hourly kind of territory, is they should be taking the nightmare cars off the younger guys and not having that dumped on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
it's a team for sure. What do you think about, we've heard different people discuss the scenario of like a foreman does all the diags or does say a lot of the inspections of, because sometimes when we use a diag, it can be, are you diagging an oil leak? Well, you kind of are, but you're checking it out. And then they just pass that work off. You know what I mean? So if your shop foreman is like yourself, really strong on diag and you scan a bunch of cars, you do some diag, and then you order some parts. How do you feel about those parts being passed around to get installed by other techs?
Honestly, if I'm making, that would be what I'd rather do.
Mm-hmm.
If it came down to it, I'd rather do the diag than the actual repairs.
Right.
A lot more fun for me. I've had that situation where the problem is you pass it on to that kid and he doesn't do the repair right.
Yeah.
Because the real repair was harder than he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get a comeback.
Yep.
So that is one of the biggest issues with passing that work on is who's the comeback go to?
Yes.
The guy that diagnosed it or the guy that fixed it?
Yeah, because I've never seen that system work effectively for any great length of time before that becomes it gets kind of pushed off to the side and they go back to doing it the other way, because it is that situation, right? There's that whole thing. Well, is it really a comeback? Because how the customer can be. You can fix an evap fault, and next month the oxygen sensor decides to leave the chat, and to the customer the light's on. The car might run for very much the same way. It's a comeback, right? So then you go scan it, and then you have to explain, oh, that's not really a comeback, I don't think. And you go through that process. When we start to try and back flag techs, or we try and start to, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I found it always led to hurt feelings, and I felt that it always is. You're just limiting everybody getting to a higher level in terms of being a little more responsible. They diagnose their own tickets, they install their own parts, they deal with the fallout if it's not right or it is right, or if they have a comeback, it's on them, right?
That was my biggest holdup with that is when it's not done right, it's like I've had to go back and fix, comebacks on other techs that were either out sick or whatever. And I'm like, oh, come on. No, come on. Why'd you do that? So normally for me, I'd always just, fix it myself and not have to worry about it coming back.
Yeah. There's a shop.
Because then after I get done, I confirm that it's fixed, and then I really don't have to worry about it coming back.
There's a local independent to me that's how they're set up, is they have two senior techs. They do all the diag, order all the parts, and the apprentices install the parts. And then what has now happened in that shop is the shop's known for the apprentices are giving a resignation and going somewhere else, and both of them, I've talked to a couple of them, have said, well, I don't learn anything. I don't know. I'm just told to put this part in, and I get a very little exposure as to actually why that part needed to be replaced. Now, I'm not talking so much like if we see a leaky water pump, we know why the water pump has to be replaced, but just put that oxygen sensor in, or just put that leak detection pump in, or ESIM switch, or whatever. They don't really know, right? It's just they're told to do it. And I feel that's that's not helping our next generation get to the level that they need to be successful techs, right? I think it's just,
Yeah.
I think
No, I mean, that's, you have to, if you're not growing in this industry, you're just going backwards.
Yeah.
So those young technicians, if they're not learning, they're just bolting parts on, that's all they're ever going to be.
Yeah.
And if that, like I've known tire techs, that's all they want to do.
Mhm.
They just want to do tires.
Yep.
And okay, great. You do tires. I don't want to do tires.
Yeah.
But if they want to progress, a shop has to cater to that, because it literally, in a few years, those are the guys in that shop that are doing the diagnostics and handing it off to the apprentice to install.
Yep.
If they don't train them, they're going to just cycle out until they find the perfect, just, I want to put parts on, that's all I want to do. And hopefully most people don't want to be like that.
Yeah, although I've met a lot of techs that get comfortable, because if they can get into that routine, Mike, of just I show up and I know that I've got, like I see it a lot with transmission work. I know that I show up and I've got 3 CVTs that I can put in, by lunch tomorrow. That they're pretty happy, right? There's some hours there, right there, and it's, they never want to necessarily go beyond that. I always, even my days at the dealer, I always looked past that, or tried to look past it, because it's like, well, at some point though, that transmission is going to be out of warranty, and we're not going to see as many of it in the shop, right? So because I'm doing a lot of warranty work, right? Not at a dealer. It's most of it. So once those cars are out of warranty, you don't tend to see them as much, because you know how it goes. People don't always go back to the dealer to continue to get their cars serviced and repaired. So I was always a little scared. Well, what do I do when that transmission is not coming in all the time? How do I make hours, right? What's going to happen next? And we know that the way the cars are built now, there's always going to be pattern failures and weak points and stuff like that to, I don't want to use the word exploit, but certainly is going to be there for us to do. But I mean, I've always found that attitude of, it's just like, I want to do repetition. Man, if they pulled the rug out from us and built something that never broke, you might be suffering there, because then you got to rely on the customer wanting to actually maintain it, not just repair it.
Yeah. See, that kind of stuff just is mind numbing to me. Doing the same repair over and over and over again is just, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I got to put a alternator in this, Honda Civic or Accord or whatever. I'm like, haven't done 400 of those. Okay, 10 millimeter, 14 millimeter. Okay, yeah. And like, I could literally do some of that stuff blindfolded, and like I know, the belt pattern of most of the Hondas by heart.
Right. Yep.
I because I've done so many of them, I know I take this out, then I do this, and then I do them in like no time, but it's like, can I get a check engine light or something? Because this is boring.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it takes a mix of both in a shop, right? Some people that are just happy with some repetition and familiarity. And then we do need, I think, some people that actually enjoy the change up. I was always that type. Like, I love the challenges of, okay, here's something that's only, 6 months old, doesn't even have 10,000 miles on it, and it's towed in because it won't start. I love that kind of stuff, right? I hated how it sometimes affected the pay, but I love that it was like, you got to see it first, right? You got to be, because some of us have a bit of an ego in this industry, right? We like the
no egos at all.
You want to pump your chest out and go, I fixed that, right? And I think that can get addictive. Did you get that, like, that way, where, I mean, I know you like a challenge, but did you ever have a point in your career where it got addictive, not to chase the money, but to chase the harder and harder, more complex challenges?
Yeah. When I had my shop, I was especially like that. I was the last chance shop for a lot of check engine lights to pass emissions. And, and it's really hard to make money on a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It really gets it can drag down a shop. And I quickly realized that it wasn't the best way as far as business to operate. So I had to put my ego a little aside and go, no, I got to charge for this or this goes away. Because, I can pump out my chest all I want. It doesn't pay the bills.
Right. Yeah. Do you see,
having, realizing me spending 4 hours trying to figure out this check engine light that's been to 4 other shops and they're already broken in it to, $2,000.
Yeah.
And instead I should have been working on that car that has, 6 hours sold and the customer wants it back and will give me way more money. That makes more sense. So if a customer's not willing to spend the money to really look into it, I got over the ego thing because it's not worth it. It just,
we see a lot
I feel good, but
yeah,
I didn't make any money and I cost, the shop money, whether I was working for myself or somebody else.
I'm seeing a lot of shops get into down that rabbit hole though, right? Like of that,
wrap tons.
Yeah. It's a funny thing, right? Because it seems like Paul Danner's had a couple of videos about it, right? How his brother's shop, the more known they become for being able to solve that complex stuff, the more people that are and then I think about Ivan, like look at how people will bring some 10, 12-year-old car, put it on a trailer, drive it across the country, drop it in Ivan's yard, and he solves it and fixes it in an hour. And I'm sitting there pulling my hair out going, you can't tell me that thing came across the country and it had to pass 1,000 techs that would have been able to do that same repair.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
It's just, and that's not me ripping on Ivan. It's just like,
Have you met Ivan?
I have not. So the first ever destination event I went to, was ASTE last November. Otherwise up here in Canada, now COVID was a thing, right? We couldn't really travel. But up here in Canada, we don't get those kind of destination events. There is one, and it's not even as big as ASTE. The name of it escapes me at the moment. So we are lacking up here in terms of, how involved we get in the aftermarket. Like, I mean, the aftermarket exists. We have NAPA, we have CarQuest. Like I go to NAPA training, I can get signed up with CTI, all that kind of stuff. But for me, my bread and butter, my training has been online. And that's so I've been following, before I was on Facebook, I was on IATN. I didn't really say much. I just kind of lurked because I was, I was out of my league there in terms of, you know what I mean, the minds that are on there, right? So,
I'm still a member of IATN. I go back to 2004.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I'm a founding member of Diagnostic Network.
Yeah,
so
I
can understand that being a little more difficult.
For me, it was a situation of like these guys are they're like celebrities to me, right? Paul and Ivan and Eric O and all these kind of stuff, as they are to a lot of us in the industry now, right? Like, I think that's an amazing thing. People like yourself to come along and get this industry talking about how to do it. But yeah, I've never met Ivan. I've never met Eric. I met Paul at ASTE. That was cool. Yeah. I met Brandon Dills, Brendan Steckler, Super Mario. I mean, it was.
Have not met Mario yet.
Oh, dude, he is a really cool cat. He is a phenomenal guy, and like next level smart, and then humble as could be. Like he is the most approachable dude you'll ever meet. He's, and I got to say this, in the industry, everybody is. You know what I mean? I have not had one person that somebody's even said to me, oh yeah, he can be a bit of a jerk, or he's hard to, he doesn't seem. None of them have been like that. Any of my experience at AST was to meet these people that I'd read about in the magazines and seen on YouTube and whatnot. All just excellent people. It says a lot for when you hang out with Paul Danner and you realize like he is the celebrity in the room. Like when you're walking around with him, he's getting mobbed by everybody, wants to shake his hand and have a little 5-minute story about how he changed their career. And you see somebody like that, that's just, so humble about it. makes your heart feel good. It really does. Because, you know, some people you could get an ego about it, right? And
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and I've found that the best in this industry don't even have that. I think it's part of because the job can humble you, right?
On a daily
Right.
basis.
So I think that's what keeps us more grounded, you know? Like, and then you know what it's like. You put yourself out there 3 times a week,
Oh,
right? You know, you get
Yeah.
a lot of people, your haters and your detractors and just trolls. I mean, how do you keep that in perspective?
How do I keep it in perspective is if it's a personal attack,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's personally attacking me, not my content, anything like that. Your comment gets deleted.
Right.
If it happens repeatedly, you get blocked from the channel.
Right.
If you're disagree with my content, you can say whatever you want about my content.
Mm-hmm.
You disagree with it, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part of the conversation.
Yeah.
So that's really my only thing about it. You know, I've gotten, you know, I get called fat, I think about it on a daily basis on my channel.
Dude, I'm right there with you, man.
You know, it's like, you know, get the comments of like, eat a salad. I had a salad last night, you fucker.
Calling people fat's not even original anymore, right? Like, it's just like, call me, you know, just think of something better. Like, I mean, it's not original. I've heard them all, you know?
Yeah. But if you're on social media, you have to develop a very, very thick skin. Because I could literally say on my channel, my toolbox is black and orange, and I would have people disagreeing with me on that fervently, that I'm wrong. You know, it's like, where do you?
Yeah, they've
do you
never
have
seen
nothing else to do in your life but complain on YouTube?
Sadly, there's a large contingency of people that's getting bigger by the day that don't have anything better to do, and it's you know, for me, I started out in the Facebook groups, where I first got my voice in terms of starting to network people and talked about this. And man, I got lit up a lot. Not because I was necessarily wrong, but you know, people that know me and have known me a long time, it's like, if you ask for an answer, I'm going to tell you how to come to the answer. I'm not going to give you the answer, right? Just like you were talking about the fish on the stick thing.
Yeah.
And that's not a popular way to do stuff when a lot of people are on a Facebook group just trying.
No, they want the answer.
Yeah, they just give me the damn answer. So I've had people call my manager at the dealership. I've had people call me, you know, block me, like DM me, and it's just like, man, it's just Facebook. Like, it's just, you know, your world is not going to end if I don't give you the answer that you're looking for. And the reason I approached it that way, Mike, is because when I was on IATN just walking around, yeah, there was a lot of people that say, hey, check this. But there was more of the discussion of, how did you get to that result? What was your process?
Oh, yeah.
And for me, I spent a lot of time on Facebook. When Facebook took off, I was not on IATN anymore, so I didn't see IATN. I'm not on it now, because it was so instant. You know what I mean? Like, you were talking in real time. It wasn't so much IATN that happened too, but there was that. You know, you might make an answer today and somebody didn't read it till tomorrow. Like, now we carry around those stupid phones and we're on it constantly. You get immediate answer, and it just blew my mind how so many of us were professionals, but the way we conducted ourselves was just give me the frickin' answer. And I was just like, in IATN, that was so foreign. It was like, there was such healthy conversations about, you know, training and different methods, and guys talking about an oxygen sensor and calling it the tomato sensor. You know what I mean? Like, there was these long.
Oh God, Matt Ragsdale.
Yeah.
And, what's his name?
Yeah. That's our friend, Fonslow. That's the first time, like, I talked to him quite a bit, and I knew Matt before Matt knew me. I knew that name. You know, there's all these names that I knew from IATN because I didn't reach out to them. I was no one. Like, they were, you know, a big deal. So when I got onto Facebook, and it was like, you'd see them I'd reach out to them like, oh man, I remember reading your stuff at IETN. But then there'd be all these people that I didn't know about. And it was like on Facebook, it was just like they were just angry and frustrated and just wanted the damn answer to fix the car. So what you get a lot of people probably that don't follow you because your content is not fixing a car, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Or I get the comments of, why don't you actually fix a car on your channel? I'm like, that's not the point of the channel.
Yeah. 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 It's, and you know, we talked about it, but there's so much of it now that I think that what I'm trying to do with this podcast and what you do with yours is we discuss the industry, right? I tell you right out, I'm not a fan of DIYers, right? Like if it were up to me, like it'd be a lot harder to buy some of the parts that people want to buy. Maybe some of the tooling wouldn't even be available. And I just think that it's, you know, it's getting past the point of a lot of what a DIY can do effectively. And I feel that it's like we're only enabling at this point incorrect repairs versus enabling proper repairs.
Oh, you mean like you go on, a forum to ask how you retract electronic parking brakes, and they're like, oh yeah, jump this wire here.
Yep. Yeah. Get your power probe and and oh, you don't have a power probe?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, just 2 wires. Yeah, just and oh, by the way, when you reset it really doesn't reset.
Yeah.
So chances are your rear brakes aren't going to work properly, but it's fine.
Oh, don't worry, because the grinding noise is gone, but now the calipers don't want to work properly. So did you really get a successor? Yeah, okay, so good for you. You got some old speaker wire and a battery, and you saw some light show from some sparks shooting. Cool. But what about the other people that are riding around on that now in the lane next to that they don't even know? That was always my beef with DIY. I always felt like if we eliminated more of the DIY, more of those cars would end up in a shop. Now, I'm not saying that those customers are every customer I want. I'm not trying to say that. But I always thought, well, if they wind up in somebody's shop, the industry makes a little bit more money next year. That's how I always saw it. So, and
yeah, if you want to really piss off some people, do a video about R1234YF being available to the general public.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because I got ripped on that video.
I hate that refrigerant, honestly. It's just
oh god that stuff has kicked my butt so many times because it's extremely small leaks will still fail that damn machine.
Yeah.
And but it's like fine if they can do the repairs, but let us do the charging. I mean, I've seen cars on our R134A that had 2 pounds extra in it because they just kept, hooking the can up, shaking it because it still wasn't blowing cold because the compressor wasn't kicking on.
Yeah. See, up here in Canada, those refrigerant gases, 134, R12, and even 1234 YF you can't buy them without a certification. You can't buy the actual real gas. Now, we have a company called Red Tech, and they make knockoffs, which is, I think, a propane blend and some other stuff, right? And right? But we up here, AC is very much like we still get a lot more of that work coming in the shop, maybe because it's a lot of people are just smart enough not to go down to the local parts store and buy the Red Tech can and put it in because, they've heard the horror stories of the black goo that ends up in everybody's compressor and it could cost more money. But a lot of us, they just don't fix the AC because they find that it's like, okay, because for us, if the system we know has a leak, we're not allowed legally to even put a charge in it, right? We're not allowed because you're now putting something into an ozone depleting, air quotes, greenhouse gas producing car. So it's funny because like we all have to sit through this 5-hour course. It's nothing to do with how the AC system in the car works. It's just how to not kill the polar bears by accidentally venting it to the atmosphere. And then so the part stores could then sell the refrigerant to a shop. I have never had anybody drop off, one can or a skid of, cylinders and not once ask for anybody's paperwork. So it's just a joke, right?
I don't even know where my license is for refrigerant.
Yeah.
In, the US, there are restrictions on buying 30-pound bottles of it,
Mhm.
but anybody can go to a parts store and buy the little cans.
Yeah.
But I'm in Georgia, so everybody they'll do their AC before they fix their brakes.
Right. Yeah.
Because it gets to 90, 100 degrees all the time for 8 months out of the year. But yeah, no, that's when you're talking about handling something that could literally blind you
Mhm.
accidentally. I mean, easy enough.
Yep.
You really don't want, some Joe Schmo messing with it.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, no, I got ripped apart on that one.
Yeah. How do you feel about, like, because I mean, it's a touchy subject too. How do you feel when you hear some people say, well, Joe Blow shouldn't be able to walk into a parts store and buy brake parts or suspension parts for their car? That's it's a pretty hot topic in terms of it. This very divides the industry, right? How do you feel about it? Like, because I know how I feel.
I mean, I'm all right with DIYers. It's actually better now because there's a lot more information out there than there used to be,
Mhm.
Good and bad. I'm not really opposed to DIYers. My biggest thing with DIYers is hopefully you're smart enough to realize you're in over your head and bring a professional into it.
Right.
But I mean, that computer back there I built myself. I
Mhm.
can, somebody can fix their own car. It's up to them. So I don't really have a problem with it. I think there's certain things that should be restricted from the DIY.
That computer, though, it's not driving in the lane next to you, though.
True.
It might not have the wheel fall off, and or the we all joke about the brake pads in upside down, right, or backwards. Like, I've yet to see that in person, but I was just talking to my friend yesterday, and they said I finally saw that actually in real life. It wasn't a stage thing. It actually came in, and we used to think it was like an internet like folklore, right? Because somebody do that. Like, I've seen the calipers upside down more than once.
Oh yeah.
I the brake pads in backwards. No, I haven't. That's the part that always was like for me as a DIY, especially as I got older. Because when I was a young kid, before I got into working in my first shop, I mean, I fixed my own, and I thought I was competent. And then you get around some professionals, you realize, like, there was a lot I didn't know, right? And there was a lot of things I wasn't doing properly. I was just very lucky that more stuff, bad stuff than bad. So that's how I feel about that. I mean, could we ever implement some kind of thing where it's like, okay, so you can't buy a set of brake pads to show some type of competency? I mean, no, that's impossible. And then we're talking about if we start to say no car parts available to anybody in the public except for professionals. Well, there goes the whole aftermarket parts industry. There is no more SEMA. There is no more all the stuff we grew up watching, or a lot of us, Hot Rod TV and all that kind of stuff, gone like that. There's no enthusiast anymore. So I'm torn on that. It's a weird paradigm for me to try and decide how I feel about it, because some days I really I feel strongly about it when I see some of the stuff that comes in and somebody says, oh, I'm going to fix that. Like I had a truck last week and the wheel bearings, like the wheel's going to leave the chat. And, oh, I'm going to fix that myself. That's even scarier than already seeing it and you not even knowing it's bad, So, because it wasn't there for a wheel bearing noise, it was there for an exhaust noise. Cool, right? And then you put it up on the hoist, you do your shakedown like you're trained to do, right? The wheels come off the ground, you check the front end, and this is, not good. Oh, I never even heard that. No doubt. So
just turn the radio up a little more.
All right. Or, I mean, the muffler had fallen off. How would you hear it? Like you're running a straight pipe Ford truck. Like So that's always been my thing is, I'm always worried about the car in the lane next to me. I'm not worried about my own that I drive, but I am worried about the car in the lane next to me. And it's even worse if that person knows there's something wrong and it's just, I just hadn't got to it, versus, the ignorance is bliss thing is fine. If they don't know any better and they don't have any money and they're just hoping that it fixes itself, you've seen the customers that do that, right? I just hope that it fixes itself. Whereas the person that knows there's something wrong and it's just like, oh yeah, I got to get to that. My feeling is you got to get to the phone and get it towed to the shop. That's how I feel. So,
yeah, either you got to make it a priority or you've got to make it a priority and just pay for it.
Yeah. What do you feel about like unpaid training? So when we talk about these events, destination events, or after hours training or something like that, do you feel like they should be paid to go?
I've only been paid once to go to training. And most of the time I've gone to, like, anytime I've gone to an event,
yep,
I've paid to be there and it cost me vacation time.
Yeah.
The only time I've been paid to go to a training event was STX down in Orlando, where my ex-boss paid for me to go and paid for me to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Every other time I've paid. When I met Matt Fanslow at Auto Mechanica, it was on my dime. It was on my vacation pay.
Yeah.
I think if it's a worthwhile event, at the bare minimum, the shop should be paying for that technician to go.
Mm-hmm.
Considering he's going for the benefit of the shop, he should also be paid for his time.
Yeah.
I don't think that, a shop should just get out of not, the tech's going to increase his skills for your shop.
Yeah.
He should be compensated and he shouldn't have to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
But so few shops really think that.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge financial commitment, right? Like it's, different people have been tossing numbers around, and, some people it's like, could be, $50,000 to take a team to a destination event, depending on airfare and if you're going to pay them for their time while they're there, right? Like it's hard to say, okay, everybody in the shop, we're going to go to Vision. We're going to pay the flights. We're going to put you up in a hotel. We're going to feed you and everything else. Could you use your holiday pay, or your allotted holiday time to go and do that? There's a lot of us in the industry that to go to an event like that is kind of like a holiday, right? I'm getting out of the shop. Yeah. I'm getting away from the shop. If you're really nerdy and you're into what you're learning there, it's like going to Disney World. But for that tech that doesn't want to go, you're now dragging him or her along, or you're leaving them out of the opportunity. And I think that puts them in a weird spot. So, like for me to go at ASTE, I was not paid to go to ASTE. I had to use my holiday time. It was fine. I needed a break from the shop, but I was amazed at how many people I saw there that were like, yeah, there were, their shop's paying them to be there. Like they, I think I think we need more of that. We got to see some door rates go up, or we have to see some costs come down, I guess, if we're going to make it a really big thing in the industry. And I don't know how we get there. What do you think? Like,
I mean, I know, I don't know if you've seen them on YouTube, Royalty Auto Repair.
Yes. Yeah.
Tech I used to work with, that I worked at the shop I used to work at, he's Andrew, who's been in several of their videos.
Yeah.
His boss takes the entire crew either to Vision every year or to STX.
Right.
And because they brought him to STX, but he pays for the entire crew to go every year.
Yeah.
And he's done that for years. So it's entirely, and he's not a huge shop. It's not like he's a massive shop, but the owner of the business has to take that as a priority. And most shop owners, I've gotten accused of being really negative about the industry lately, but most shop owners can't see the benefit of that. And that's probably one of the biggest things we as content creators need to do is show the benefit of shutting down your shop, taking that loss of income and getting your people trained.
I agree. Yeah.
Because that's how you sell it is you get the shop owners to realize that this is an investment in my business. Yeah, it cost me a week of revenue. It cost me a week of paying my tax. It cost me for all the costs of going to this event. But what do I get out of it is better technicians that do a better job. And that's how we sell it as a industry is we have to get them on board with that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most shop owners just do not see the benefit of it.
Mm-hmm. You touched on something there when you put yourself out there. I mean, you always put yourself out there, but you've taken a lot of, people have made some comments. Oh, this guy's attitude is toxic lately. And what's Mike like? I've heard people say, oh, well, Mike is really shooting himself in the foot now because it's getting to the point where all this sour grapes is hurting, your opportunities. I don't think you think that, do you?
No.
No.
I talked to a shop the other day and they've been watching my videos.
Yeah.
And they still want to hire me.
Yeah. I don't think being open and sharing your story is going to hurt you at all. I don't think it. I think some are going to, like myself, some are going to want to hear it and are going to respect you for saying it and being open and being frank. And then others are just, we know the people in the industry that can be like that. The type are just going to be like, I'm tired of listening. And they're, you know what? It wouldn't matter who it was. They're tired of listening to mechanics, grumble, and I don't think it's hurting you to be out here lately talking about the frustrations that you're having, what you went through, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what a content creator does is, especially when you're doing opinion. I mean, cause they're 100% my opinions. Yep. You talk about what you're going through.
Yep.
And I've got a video coming out Monday. The title, the title is I've been this industry's biggest champion and its biggest critic, because I've always done positive and negative content about this industry because there's a whole spectrum of stuff to talk about. I got to talk about the techs that are hacks. I got to talk about the shop owners that are, not paying crap and wonder why they can't get help.
Yep.
And I got to talk about the other stuff that's good. You can make a great living doing this. You get a lot of satisfaction from doing this for a living.
Yep.
But every part of this industry is every part of this industry. And I talk about every part of this industry. And I made a comment in that video. I literally made a video called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly about the automotive industry. Because it's the truth. There's every spectrum you can think of in this industry. And, and I actually, somebody made a comment in a video that went live today. And I was like, you're just bitter and yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, I'm not even bitter anymore. I'm actually relieved that I don't work at that shop anymore. But it was like, well, what do you suggest I talk about for content?
Sure.
And all I talked about was talking about the shop I used to have. And I'm like, I've talked about it before in videos. I talked about it I think my last live stream I did, I talked about it in that video about why the shop went away. And I'm like, no, and I'm sitting there thinking, you just want me to talk about it so you can see how stupid he is. He doesn't know how to run a shop because
Yep.
To prove how smart he is compared to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then the two stages down, like the next comment down on the creator page is a video I did like 7-8 years ago, 5-6 years ago, something like that, and it's calling out hack techs.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't know how else to describe it. I talk about everything in this industry.
Yeah, that's for me. I can tell you that I feel to keep the lines of communication open, or not so much the lines of communication, but kind of share some cautionary tales, really helps to unburden me, right? So when people look back at me, and this is not me, this is about you, but if you saw my first podcast I did for ASOG almost 2 years ago, it's literally titled "This Industry's Effed," right? And it was because of where I was in my career at the time. I was unemployed, right? I was laid off, COVID, the whole thing. I was angry. I was mad. I was, I was jaded. That's how this podcast got its name. I'm jaded. And, because I'm in a situation where, there's job offers coming in while I'm laid off, but they suck. They are not, the pay is not, the culture is not right. Do you want to go work at Toyota for $25 an hour flat rate? No, thanks. I'll sit here on what we call unemployment and not, because I'll make more money, and I'm not interested in being that for you. And, talking with the guys at ASOG, that gave me a voice, and I felt so much better. And I mean, life turned around. I got a job, I wound up at ASTE, but I can genuinely tell you, and you probably don't even need to tell you, unburdening your feelings this way, like I do through the podcast and you do the thing, is healthy, and it shouldn't be ridiculed. And you got to have thick skin to put yourself out there. But I mean, man, if I had not done that podcast, you and I wouldn't be talking right now, and I wouldn't be where I am in the industry, because it resonated with so many people. And that's what I love about like your content lately, is because it resonates with so many people. We've all been there. Every mechanic at some point has lost their job, right? And had detractors in the shop, and people say this and the scuttlebutt and blah, blah, blah. None of it friggin' matters, right? We have a unique skill set that is always going to be in demand, and we are always going to be employable, right? If we want to be. And so for people to say, oh, well, Michael's, really hurting his opportunities by continuing to make content. Nah, not at all. I don't think so. Not even close. I think, and, because when you talked about, training your replacement, that really resonated with me and with a lot of other people that I talked with, because in a lot of, especially a dealership environment, I saw that happen so many times, right? You're the guy that figures out the first of what becomes a pattern failure. You're the guy that finds it. You're the guy that finds that known connection issue, that known weak spot in the splice, whatever. Well, if you go and show that to people then that didn't lose their butt finding it, right?
Yeah.
Donating their paycheck to find it. The next time that comes in, that's one less job you don't have. And I think that when we talk about, not training your replacement, we have to walk that very carefully, because this industry, I don't think, appreciates the way we need to be appreciated, that there is no exit strategy, right? So there's only so many opportunities I'm going to get to learn things before our brains slow down, our bodies slow down. We don't fire as well as we did. If I'm always giving, I'm essentially the people that can come up underneath me that I gave that all to, they're starting to become just as valuable as I am, unfortunately, in a lot of the workforce. And I'm really torn on that, because I don't know how to approach it. What's the advice for, because I know you say you're going to continue to mentor, you're going to continue because it's just natural evolution, but are you going to do anything different, Mike, to avoid this happening in future?
No, I'm still going to train. It's something I've always done. If somebody wants help, I'm going to do it.
Right.
Just like somebody needs help pushing a car, and I'm going to drop everything, go help them push a car.
Mm-hmm.
If this kind of stuff not to give away too much, but
No, and listen,
I should have seen the writing on the wall at that shop. And my opinion of that is hopefully I'll be better aware of the writing on the wall.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rather than, not training.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think not training is not an answer.
Yeah.
It just, all you're doing is holding other people back,
mm-hmm.
And just like I talked about when I was a shop foreman. I mean, I just can't do that. I can't take, something from them just because I want to be selfish.
Yeah.
It's just not in my nature.
I think that's happened for too long in this industry. And I think that's half the reason we're at where we are,
Yeah.
I just think that like everything that you have said in the last month, I've taken it as just a cautionary tale. I don't take it as a grumpy, disgruntled, jaded, technician. I just take it as a cautionary tale. Keep your eyes open, watch what's going on, listen, do the right thing every day and be prepared. I think that's still a message that's getting lost on a lot of people, is you have to be prepared financially for what is inevitably going to happen to all of us, right? Is as we slow down, as we turn less hours, as less work may come in, the shop may go through a change. How many techs, Mike, get a notice that the business is shutting down? Everything seems fine, and all of a sudden, the business is going to shut down, and you didn't do anything wrong. We just screwed it up. You have to.
I mean, you have to. I mean, that's that's why I've talked so much about financial stuff on my channel,
mm-hmm.
is because so many people are completely financially illiterate.
Yeah.
They're and I've gotten some good comments on some of the stuff I've done, but like most people, if their checks a day late,
yes,
they're bouncing checks left and right out of their account because, they're set up to pay things past due the day their check goes in their account.
Yeah.
And, understanding that's not a way to live, because if you're that close to losing everything, anything happens.
Mm-hmm.
You get a car wreck, which if you live in Atlanta, that can happen to you anytime.
Yeah. Yep.
It's so you can go from everything is great to I lost my house, I lost my car, and while I was recovering in the hospital, I lost my job. So now I literally am homeless.
Yeah.
And most people don't understand that. I mean, it's like, you have to be prepared for just shit to happen.
Yeah. We see that tale, before you know it, you're selling your tools, the very thing that is your livelihood, that makes you your money, just to cover, a medical expense. Or even we joke about it, sometimes, how it's like the biggest hang up we have is if we blow the engine up or transmission up in our daily, right? And I mean, that's an inconvenience, and that can really set you behind, right? If you're all of a sudden like you've got to take a paycheck and find something, either a replacement vehicle, because if you're a lot of the techs that just drive junk, or
as my daughter's sitting in the garage with a bad engine.
Yeah. Right. Or if you're like,
it's going to Hyundai on Monday. So
it's one of the recall ones.
Yeah, it's a 2011 2.4.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yeah,
they'll knock that out in 8 hours. It'll be done. Be back by.
Whether or not they have one is the problem.
Yeah. So, and that's what I've taken away from it is, and I lived a long time in this career, starting out with tool debt and the whole thing of, if I lost my job, or, if the check went in late or something, I was into overdraft, right? I was paying interest now and living on a credit card to eat, because it was just, I wasn't as smart. So, I think that's been a great takeaway that I've taken from you in the last couple of weeks is that. So the last kind of question I wanted to ask you, or it's not a question so much, it is a question. how do you see, like, what's the end process as we slow down and as we age out and things start to hurt more and we just don't produce the amount of hours, from a flat rate perspective, or even, as a production perspective? What do you wish more techs had waiting for them when they are not necessarily old enough to be out of the workforce, but they're not viable young, money making machines on the floor? What do you wish could happen, be available for more of them?
I think everybody's going to be different.
Mhm.
I think everybody should be kind of figuring out their path in their career after they can't turn wrenches.
Right.
So whether it's, I can just retire, done, stay home, go fish or whatever. Or whether you move to more of a managerial role, shop foreman that does not turn wrenches, just diagnoses cars. Because you figure if you're paid hourly or salary or whatever, and all you're there is to deal with the problem cars,
Mhm.
you can do that for a lot longer than,
Yeah.
turning wrenches a day in, day out. Or you move to a teaching role, or you just go do something else. Maybe you take some night school classes and figure out something that you can do, but you always should have a plan. Is whatever you do in life. I mean, there's lots of careers that fizzle out.
Yeah.
I mean, just ageism in this country is a problem. So, if you're in sales and you're, I'm gonna be a little blue here, but if you're a hot little thing selling something and you get too old,
Yep.
they're not going to employ you anymore.
Yep.
But it's a good, I used on Fanslow's podcast about, a football player at 30, they're done.
Yeah.
So as people, we should have plans towards the end of our careers.
Yeah.
We should know what we're going to do. I mean, part of that for me is YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
because
Okay.
I can be the grumpy old guy on YouTube forever.
Yep. Yeah. Because I see a lot of people, and it's been discussed for years in the industry how, and you hear it sometimes on the even a customer says it, right? When they talk to a mechanic and a mechanic actually has some people skills and some communication, conversation skills, how we've always said, oh, if more techs would just become service writers, because it would be such better communication between what's truly going on out there on the floor under the hood and to the customer, it would be amazing. But a lot of us, let's be straight. A lot of us, for some of us, to go and take that role would be a pay cut, right? To go from being a tech earning X to in a service advisor role, huge pay cut. The other thing is, I was talking with a good friend beginning of this week about this. Why he said a lot of technicians just don't have the people skills, the conversation skills. They're, it's not about an image thing. It's just they're terrible to talk to. They're grouchy and they're not. They're short and frank and blunt like a spoon, like me, and it doesn't work well. So, how do you see yourself in the future? Like maybe doing that? Could you transition into an advisor role if the money was there?
If I could,
Yeah.
I have sales experience. I dealt with when I was with Challenger Lifts, I dealt with dealer principals,
Right.
and you know how fun they are to deal with.
Yeah, they're
basically the pinnacle car salesmen, and you're trying to sell them something.
Oh, they're the smartest guy in the building, right?
Yeah, almost never.
Yeah.
Could I do it? Yes. Do I really want to do it? No, not really.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with the public kind of sucks. But to your point, no, most like technicians transitioning to service writers would be great for techs.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with the techs, they would know exactly what they're dealing with. They would know exactly what position we are. The problem is most techs don't have the people, as you said, the people skills or the sales skills.
Right.
They don't understand how to bob and weave for customers.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand that, you've got, because bluntly going, yeah, it's $1,200 to fix your car. You want to do it?
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of cases, isn't going to,
Yeah.
do it. You have to, smooth talk them. We checked over your car, and looking over the car, the technician found this, and we really need to look at replacing this part. You got to do the song and dance for, and most technicians just don't have those skills.
Yeah.
Could they learn them? Yes, maybe, but it's a very unique position. In sales is just a unique position.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand people a lot better than most people do.
Yep. It's very much
you have to understand body language. You have to, nowadays you have to figure out how they are over text, which makes it even harder to understand how to sell somebody.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's a very involved skill that a lot of people just don't have. So I don't think it's a viable transition for most people.
Mm-hmm. It's something I think I'm going to wind up doing in the not near future, but I mean, I'll be 48 in the fall, and I keep telling myself by the time I'm 55, I want to be long done with, doing the twice annual tire rush that happens here seasonally. And I want to be away from that. Right. And I feel like, too many times the industry said, I remember somebody telling it to me 20 years ago, I don't want a mechanic as a service advisor because they wouldn't sell everything that the car needs. They would only sell the bare minimum to fix the car. What do you think about that?
I think that's probably BS.
Yeah.
I mean, a technician that, let's just say for me,
Mm-hmm.
when I write up something a car needs, the car needs it.
Yep.
And I'll notate on how severe, whatever the, car, whatever the problem is, like it brakes are grinding, it needs it now. Tires got, cords showing they'll need them now.
Mm-hmm.
This oil leak,
yes,
while it's leaking, this can wait if they do need to do the other stuff. So no, I think a technician that, especially a flat rate technician, would be trying to sell everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also not necessarily the best method for people.
Yeah.
Because if you're hit them with, it'll be, it needs this, it's, $4,000, and you wait, sit there in silence, you might have lost the entire sale, whereas somebody that was a little more adept would have explained, you need brakes, you need tires, these really should be done. Technician also noted, this oil leak, you want to get that done, that'll be additional, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And kind of sweet talk them into doing, a good salesman might be able to talk them into everything, but, they're always, a good salesman is always going to try to sell them everything they can.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can say, well, a good salesman could sell, ice to an Eskimo, and that's a different problem.
Yep. Yeah. And too many times though, like we had an interesting conversation, the episode that just dropped last week, where we talked about kind of that dynamic that happens when, you've got an advisor that sells just a ticket and the ticket's handed to them from the tech, and the tech says it's going to X, Y, and Z is going to fix the car, and it doesn't fix the car. And you start to see a trend happen where, it's always X, Y, and Z, and it never fixes the car. At that point, who do you start to hold responsible, right? Because you've got it's almost like a team effort then at that point, right? Where you've got the advisor that's knowing, okay, this looks like a rubber stamped RO again, and it didn't fix it last time, but I need my commission. And that tech is doing it because he needs his commission. We struggle with that sometimes. I have in my career, because it's like I get just as mad at the tech that sells that work order as I do the advisor who sells that work order. Do you know what I mean? Like it's neither one is being the advocate for the consumer, the customer.
Yeah, no, I mean, I blame both of them 100%.
Yeah.
That service advisor should know better.
Mm-hmm.
That tech should know better.
Yeah.
I've said this many times, My priority is always making sure that customer's vehicle is safe and reliable.
Mm-hmm.
If I look at that car and, a $5 gasket is going to keep that engine from blowing up, but I can make more money doing the, water pump or timing belt or something like that. Yeah. No, you need to do that gasket first.
Mm-hmm.
If all they've got enough money is for one of these, do that.
Yeah.
That's my priority. And it does piss me off to no end when people do that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That technician should be accountable for him rubber stamping that ticket, and that service writer should be held accountable for, enabling him to rubber stamp that ticket. Yeah. I've had service writers question me, I had this, I'll go back to a long, long time ago. I had a service writer that I had a check engine light, or not a check engine light, it was a misfire on an old Jeep 4-cylinder.
Yep.
And I pulled it in and I did the full gauntlet on it. It had a dead misfire. I checked for spark. I swapped spark plugs. I checked compression on it. It had a dead miss on cylinder number 1.
Mm-hmm.
And then I checked, fuel pressure. I checked for injector pulse, had injector pulse on, and I didn't have a scope at that time. So it was literally just a Noid light.
Yeah.
But number 1 wasn't clicking.
Mm-hmm.
So I went up there and said, it needs an injector. And then service writer goes, no, he just put injectors on there. Well, 1, that would have been good information to have.
Exactly.
And 2, it still needs an injector. Sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And he argued with me, and I said, fine. If order an injector, if it doesn't fix it, it's $100 bet whether or not this will fix it.
Yep.
And so he, fine, ordered an injector from AutoZone because it was right up the road. I put it on, purred like a kitten. I never got my $100 either.
Yeah. Surprising, right? That tends to be how it goes.
But it's, if the service writer is just rubber stamping it just as much as the tech is, they both need to be held accountable. Yeah.
And I think when we see all the, because my own opinion is on flat rate is that it's and this is not to start the flat rate argument. It's to just say that I feel like it's a tool that's not being utilized properly. And I think that it gets a bad rap too many times because it's not implemented properly. Excuse me. So, I feel like when we see a lot of people that are detractors for it, it's because they've got some negative experiences from that when they've seen that rubber stamp scenario that we're talking about, right? That's my own, is because I've saw it. I've been through it, I'm not against flat rate. I just know that for me, as I've slowed down, it's better to be in the situation that I'm in, with a good hourly pay, than to be fighting at the dealer for every little, and I'll say the dealer because around here, I can't think of one independent shop in my area that pays flat rate. Around here, when you talk about flat rate in an independent shop, every owner rolls their eyes and go, I will never pay my people that way. I will never, I hated that when I was flat rate. That tends to be the attitude around here. If you want to work even the chain stores around here, a lot of them have gone to a modified where they're an hourly and then they're a bonus on their production. There's not a whole lot. The only ones that seem to be hanging on to flat rate around here is the dealerships. And that's been my only background to ever work flat rate. And I don't think the guys that can go into the aftermarket and work on any make and model and make a living flat rate, my hat's off to you, because I had a hard enough time. Well, not a hard enough time, but I was good because I knew my product well. And that was the only product I had to know to that level, right? Well, if you start to add in all the other pattern failures and knowing the product, it's daunting. It really is. I feel
you have the advantage in the aftermarket. You don't have warranty pay.
Yes, true. Yeah.
So it's a little easier not to get your butt handed to you on a card that you're not familiar with. But again, as I've said before, I don't care how you get paid.
Mm-hmm.
As a fact, I don't care how anybody in this industry gets paid.
Yeah.
I don't care if you get, paid in flamingo units or FRU, as BMW calls them.
Yeah.
Who cares? All I care about is that technicians in this industry make the most amount of money they can for doing the job they do. Who cares, what they call how you get paid,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's hourly with commission, salary, flat rate, whatever. It's the number on your paycheck that matters.
Yep.
And I want everybody in this industry that's a technician to get the most amount of money they can. You have a finite lifespan in this industry.
Yep.
And so you need to maximize your income for that time you're able to do this job. So you're not 90 years old working at Walmart just so you can buy a can of tuna to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I advocate for is who cares how you get paid?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I said earlier in this thing, if you, the way you make the most money in the United States in this industry is flat rate. Because if you're efficient, that's how you make the most in most cases. All of them, probably not. But in my experience, that's how you make the most money. And that's what I care about is the technicians that are doing this make the most money they can doing this job.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent point to leave off at. And I appreciate you coming on here, and I wanted you to feel comfortable and know that this was not going to be, a jump on Mike type thing. I wanted you to feel like, and I know you got thick skin, you're not worried, right? But I wanted you to just I wanted you to know that I appreciate you coming on and saying this and saying everything, because I think a lot of what you have said for years has been misunderstood. And, and that's not because you haven't delivered it properly. I just feel sometimes the algorithm is people read the headline and then they don't get the whole message. And that's why, we talked about before there was this podcast and there was the ASOG podcast, I had been talking to Lucas and David saying, man, I would love to hear him do a podcast. I really would. And I can't thank you enough, Michael, for coming and choosing mine. Honestly, it means the world to me because, you're a very well-established person within the industry. You're going to get a lot of people are going to listen to this and, say, oh, he's a grouchy old bugger. And then there's going to be a lot of people that I think, Mike, are going to listen to this and go, wow, he actually does make a lot of sense. And, I want to thank you for that. Really, honestly, you do. I know you get thanked a lot, but thank you for telling your story, putting yourself out there after what is a really difficult time. And don't stop, man. Keep doing, what it is you have to do, like we talked about, to unburden, because I think that's going to be the best thing for all parties. I think it's going to be the best thing for the industry. I think it's going to be the best thing for Mike. I think it's just the best. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like therapy. Yeah. But I appreciate you having me on. It was fun.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you very much. We'll talk again. Anytime you want to be on here, you let me know. You got something you want to talk about, I'll make room for you anytime.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, everybody.